Pittsburgh was our deputy editor for electronic media here at the Jama Network. Listen to the entire array of Jama Political Reviews and Education podcasts. They include Jama Political Reviews, Jama Performance Improvement, and Jama Professionalism. Once again, I'm Ed Livingston, deputy editor for Political Reviews and Education here at Jama. Thanks for listening.
That was the Journal of the American Medical Association.
The Jama Insights articles on precision medicine, genetics, and genomics explain modern concepts in these fields and how they
to Chattanooga and actually sent a helicopter.
What do you mean it was more than for to handle? So because you fell, you had a cut on your head, and you tried to get up and you couldn't get up. What was happening?
Well, so I haven't talked about all my injuries, but I think the ambulance that arrived, I don't know what they were expecting. Maybe a broken ankle or maybe sprained ankle or something, and they realized that it could be a spinal injury, it could be all kinds of things, and that I was going to need more than, because at that point we were probably a 2-hour drive from Chattanooga, and so maybe the answer is it was more than their local hospital could handle. So they got me on a board, right, and they got me kind of strapped down, but then a helicopter came from Chattanooga and landed in the parking lot and picked me up. And I do remember, a couple things I remember. One, I don't know if you remember these Patagonia, the highest level, or the highest thickness shirts they had. They were like the long underwear, but they're almost like sweatpants. And I love that shirt, and they cut it off of me, and I remember it's the silly things you remember, right? I remember they were cutting it off of me, and I was so mad because I love that shirt. And of course you can't buy them. They don't make them like that anymore. But, they cut my shirt off and, told me to be still and got me set for transfer. And then I remember the helicopter ride. I can remember looking out the window. It was night, seeing lights when it was turning. And they took me to Chattanooga, which was maybe 90. I'm 17 years old. My whole life is in front of me. I'm on the kind of home stretch of high school.
Right. This was in January, right? So you got another half year to go, and then you're done.
Right. And it's it's your senior year of high school, so that's there's a lot of fun that comes with that. And all of a sudden, probably within a day, I had surgery. I don't think it was that night. I think it was the next day. But it was an 8-hour surgery. And the orthopedic surgeon told my mom that it was like Humpty Dumpty. He had to kind of take my ankle and elbow out, put them back together, and then put them back. Here I am in this hospital room, 90 miles from my house, and I can't move, because the other thing that happened, because of the separated pelvis, they couldn't do surgery on it, and I just had to be in bed for 6 weeks and let it heal itself. And they didn't want me to put any weight on it. The orthopedic surgery was bad enough, but then I got pancreatitis. So if I ate food or drank water or anything, it just came right back up. I could have ice chips, but that was about it. I ended up being in the hospital for 17 days. And I think in a large part because of the pancreatitis, not so much the orthopedic surgery. I then had an ambulance take me home. They had to put a hospital, my room was upstairs, so they had to put a hospital bed in our living room.
They took you back to your parents' house?
Yes. So after the 17 days, an ambulance drove me from Chattanooga back to Huntsville, and they put the hospital bed in the living room, and that's where I spent the next 5 or 6 weeks.
That's where you spent the rest of your high school.
Well, in short, so what that was, James, so it was probably sometime in March that I could even get up with crutches. And I remember that day. I remember going to the doctor the day that I stood up. And of course I still had crutches because my right ankle was in such bad shape. And then, then it was physical therapy, which you don't think about this stuff, but your hands can rotate, right? Like you just turn them. Well, my left elbow because of that. And then I fractured my left hand, had been in a cast for 6 weeks, and all that motion was gone. And I remember going to physical therapy and them just working my arms, and that was some of the most painful experiences I can remember.
Even more painful than you laying on the ground when you first fell?
Well, it's funny you say that, because the reality of the situation was I think I was in shock. And so I don't remember being in pain. What I remember is trying to get up and it not working, which makes sense because my left arm was in such bad shape. I mean, both my arms were, or my right wrist and my left arm was broken, so I couldn't push up, and of course my right ankle. But I don't remember pain necessarily. And then in the hospital, I remember pain, but I was also on a morphine pump. So, there was a lot of medication to go with that. But the physical therapy, I remember that pain because there's no shock and there's no medicine. You just have to deal with it. So
I'm curious about what your friends, your two guy friends that were, when you fell, what were they like? What was their reaction? What did they do exactly for you?
What I know is clearly they were scared, right? I landed at their feet. And
Right. One was belaying you. Yeah.
Right. He's got me. And it's clear. Well, I don't think I've said this yet. It's clear what happened. The rope came out of my harness. He didn't screw up the belay because I hit the ground and then the rope came down.
So he's still belaying. He's got the rope in his hand, and all of a sudden it goes loose, and he sees you zipping towards him, and you're not tied into the rope anymore.
Right. It scared him when we were young. And, when you're 17, you don't think a lot about bad things that can happen.
You're invincible. Or you think you're invincible. We all think we're invincible when we're that young.
We do.
I'm 33, and I still think I'm invincible.
Well, I'm 41, and those days are behind me. But
well, you also have 4 kids, so now your risk tolerance is shifting, right?
Well, yes, and all this started with you asked me, why'd you take a big break? Why did I take a break? I took a break because of this accident, and when I landed at my buddy's feet, I know it scared them. I know, they didn't climb anymore, but I know it had a profound. And throughout college, we were going backpacking trips, and I think it had a profound impact on them. They thought I was dead. They said, when I hit, it took me a second to catch my breath. Kind of like, there was a few seconds where they thought I was dead. And then, of course, they didn't know what was wrong with me. I don't know how long it took the first responders to get there. I went through a lot, but I think they went through just as much as I did. And then I walked across the stage at graduation in high school. I got down to 90 pounds, and I wasn't, at that point in my life, I wasn't very, I probably weighed 130